Hi. It's so lovely to welcome you here to my garden and at a beautiful time of day for what I'm sure will be a somewhat chaotic cooking class. Just don't expect it to be seamlessly directed. That's all I have to say. A friend of mine is here to help with the second camera. You'll see her occasionally in the big camera, camera number one. So her name is Kleiman. She's the owner of Gourmandy's Cooking School, and I am very grateful to her that she has come today to help me. So what we're going to do today is first I'm going to make the dough so you can watch how I make my dough. And obviously I pre-made a bunch of dough. So after we go through the whole process of making the dough, then I'm just going to make a bunch of pizzas, and I'm going to use the grill, which hopefully will be the perfect temperature. And I'm going to use my little tabletop oven. That is, yes, my famous tabletop oven. That is my only oven. So this is not Neapolitan pizza. This is based on the pizza dough that I made at Angeli for almost 30 years. It's kind of a hybrid between an American pizza and a Roman pizza. It's a thinner crust that has slight crispiness on the outside, but as your teeth bite through, it hits a beautiful tender crumb. Actually, it's almost a focaccia recipe because of the addition of olive oil. So let's just get right to it. I sent you the recipe, but I'm constitutionally incapable of following a recipe, even my own. So I tweaked it a little bit. And what I did was, in this bowl is 3 cups of all-purpose flour. The recipe calls for 3 1/4 cups. And what I did was I used 1/4 cup of bread flour. And I really love the way that came out. You don't have to do it. Don't go out and buy bread flour if you never use it for anything else. If you happen to have it in the house, just throw in 1/4 cup. I also have the salt in here, and I use instant yeast because that's what I'm accustomed to using. And you don't have to proof instant yeast before. You can just add it in. So I'm going to do that. And all you want to do is mix it up. To be perfectly honest, how I always make this dough is in the Cuisinart, which takes like 2 seconds. But I wasn't sure how many of you actually had that appliance, so I'm going to do it by hand. So now we're ready to add the water. Before, we need to add a little bit of oil into the water. I think it's 3 tablespoons, right? So it's 1, 2, 3. Very scientific. So there's no way of getting around it being a little messy when you do it by hand. I just have poured it in a well. And I know in this time of COVID, using my hands is probably horrific for many of you, but nobody's really going to eat these pizzas until they're, like in the oven. So as you see, I'm just mixing it up. It's a rather soft dough. And you will be hearing the serenades of Paco Kleiman throughout the evening. I tried feeding him in advance, but apparently it wasn't enough. So once you get it to this point, then basically I just want to throw everything onto the bench. And then I'm just going to start kneading it. And what you want is a soft, supple dough that might be just a tad sticky. Try not to add enough flour additionally that it gets unsticky, because then it'll be tougher. The beauty of this dough is how soft it is and kind of fragile. Now, when you do this in a food processor, literally the kneading happens as you, let me give him some cheese. Here, Puck, knock yourself out. So the mixing in the Cuisinart, you do it twice. First, you just pulse the Cuisinart so that your ingredients get basically sifted, your dry ingredients. Then you turn the machine on, and while it's running, you add the water oil mixture. And what will happen is, in just a few seconds, a ball of dough forms and kind of sits above the steel blade. And at that point, you take it out of the Cuisinart and you just sort of knead it to bring it together, but you're not really kneading it to activate the gluten because the machine has already done that for you. Right, Clemence? Okay. Clemence is the bread expert, so. Okay, so you see how sticky it is? That's fine. I always say it looks a little bit like a butt with cellulite. That's, in this instance, it's a good thing. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lightly flour the table, and I'm going to set the dough over there and cover it with a cloth. Just for, let's say, 5 to 10 minutes. We just want to give the instant yeast just a little bit of time to activate. Beauty of being outside. Let me get my hands clean. So, do we have the dough? Okay, so just want to show you the dough and my lovely attempt at making my own dough rising box. Once I form the bulk dough into the balls, because you want it to be round when it rises, the worst thing is trying to make a square into a ball when you're making pizza, square into a circle. So it's very helpful that it's already round while it's doing its major rise. And to do that, I do it in the refrigerator. I don't know if you've read the recipe, but basically, I believe in a slow rise. That's why you can get away with this not being a sourdough for flavor. Because as the dough rises in the cold, it becomes more complex in flavor. And in fact, if you let the dough rise for as much as 4 days, it will start to have a bit of a sourness. That's not what I'm looking for, really. I'm looking for something sweeter and lighter than that. But I don't ever really use this dough the same day. I'll make it, I'll let it sit for, like we're going to do, a few minutes. I'll cut it into 4, form it into the balls, put it in a little container. You can also let it rise in a to-go container like this. You can put each ball in a to-go container. But the one problem with that is because there's a lot of condensation, it does tend to get pretty wet, but that's okay if you're not into these kind of jerry-rigged situations. I always love to have the balls sitting on a towel because I don't like using cornmeal. I think that's ridiculous. It has nothing to do with pizza. Why introduce an ingredient and a flavor that you're not using in the main dough? And I don't like to use flour either because of the moisture in the dough. It gets caked up on the bottom. But if you use a good towel, you can see that it doesn't stick at all. It's just this came out so beautiful. I'm very happy with these little doughs. So we're going to set that on the side. We're going to pretend that 10 minutes have gone by. Usually after you wait 10, maybe 15 minutes max, the dough will start to rise and it will tighten, so it will look a little less like cellulite. So I'm going to give it just a couple more. Yeah, but you can see how already just that little bit of resting has allowed the dough to become much more supple. Dough really is a magical thing. Okay, So if you are a very detail-oriented person, you can weigh it out, divide it in 4. I'm just going to go ahead and divide it in 4. Now this is the move you want to master when you're making pizza dough at home. And I provided you a link to a video, not of me, but of a teacher to teach you how to do this. So what you want to do is you want to take these little dough, and in the process of forming it into a ball, what you're doing is aligning the gluten, which will allow it to trap more air and rise evenly. So one way you can do it is just by pulling it and making a seam on the bottom, and then do it in the other direction until you have a nice tight little ball. The way we do it when you have to do hundreds of them is I'm keeping my palm sideways and I'm cupping the dough, kind of like a breast. And as I'm twirling it, I'm using these fingers to tuck under the edge. So I'm kind of kneading it and tucking it at the same time. And it allows you to get a really nice tight ball. And
Evan,
you notice that I'm not using any flour.
Evan, so we have a question for you. What makes
Sure.
what makes it a good towel?
What makes it
A good towel?
a good towel?
Yeah, I think.
Oh, it shouldn't be fuzzy. It should be like a linen towel, a towel that you would use for drying glasses.
Great.
No nap to it, a nice flat towel. Linen is perfect, or hemp. But what I had on the bottom there was one of those anthropology towels. Do you have questions about what I'm doing right now? Because I'll do one more of the hand kind. Okay. So you see there's this little bit of a irregularity here, so I'm going to want to smooth that out if I can. There you go. So now what I would do, Clemence, could I have that dough box again?
So Evan, what does aligning the gluten actually mean?
Well, gluten at the beginning when you've mixed it up is just random. Like a lot of very wet doughs that are very popular now, when the dough is completely wet, the gluten is just higgledy-piggledy everywhere. Yes? More or less?
The water encourages the gluten proteins to form strands, and then the strands form into a web.
Okay, so the gluten encourages, the water encourages the gluten to form strands, and then the strands form into a web.
Yeah, moisture and movement.
Moisture and movement together. So what makes the gluten align in a very wet dough is the process of the rising itself, along with the folding that you would do, like in a sourdough bread. So that's what we're doing here. So I'm going to take these doughs out of the box. Yeah, this basically was a 24-hour rise. At Angeli, our favorite was a 2 to 3 day rise. The pizza benefited, was good for 2 days. If it was just 1 day, it would be too cracker-like. The bread, everybody loved when it was a 3rd day. So
what makes a rising box, if you will?
So what you want is you want enough depth that it will be able to rise without hitting the top, and that you'll be able to put either a towel or a lid on top of it. And because the refrigerator environment is so dry, I actually covered it with a damp towel. I took a towel and I wet it, wrung it out, and put that on top.
Great.
So now I need a little time to set myself up for actually making pizzas. So it might be a really good moment for you to ask me whatever questions you want to ask me as we move along. I'm gonna just show you my tomato sauce before we get started. Oop. Now I'm gonna get some sticking. Okay. If you manage to find these tomatoes, muti, they're perfect. And the reason they're perfect is because there's no addition of calcium chloride, which is used a lot in California and Florida canned tomatoes. What calcium chloride does is it causes the tomato to maintain its form. Why you would want to do that when you're going to be cooking it to soften it is beyond me. So these are incredibly tender. This is also a perfect texture for pizza sauce. Traditionally, pizza sauce in Italy is not cooked. It's a very, very light tomato sauce that is raw. So, which gives you a lighter, fresher taste. So if I were going to use this sauce, all I would do is add a little bit of salt to taste. And there you have it. If you want to be lazy, you could add a little bit of olive oil, but you could also just add olive oil as you're making your pizza, you know, custom-wise. You can also add herbs, but if you add herb like oregano, for example, to this, then it means every single pizza that you make is going to have that flavor profile. So hilarious. But what I use, since there's always an if, is, you know, I make my own tomato sauce every year in August or September, depending upon when the tomato harvest is really bumper. And so this is a cooked sauce, but it's unbelievably light, and it's really flavorful, and I'm really lazy. So since I have tons of pints of this already in the cabinet, I would use this for my pizzas with tomato sauce.
So Evan, instead of instant yeast, could you use some sourdough starter?
Yes, you can make pizza dough with sourdough. It's a completely different recipe though.
Okay.
I wouldn't take this recipe and then try and turn it into a sourdough pizza dough. I would just look up a good sourdough pizza dough recipe and and follow that recipe. It will be a completely different animal, totally different texture.
Sure. Now,
So
if you were to use,
go ahead.
If you were to use a Cuisinart, would you use the dough hook or some other attachment?
There is no dough hook in it. I'm talking about a food processor.
Food processor.
So the food processor doesn't have a dough hook. You would use the steel blade. I wouldn't bother to use a mixer with the dough hook. I mean, if you wanted to use a mixer, I would use the paddle.
The paddle.
And let the dough come together as much as it can with the paddle, just like I did by hand, and then finish it off kneading on the bench.
Sure. And how do you know?
I'm going to go ahead.
One more question before you go. How do you know if the yeast is quick or not quick acting?
Fleischmann's yeast is not instant yeast. It might say rapid rise or quick rise, but instant yeast is something else, and it's called instant yeast. A big brand is SAF that you see around. If you're using Fleischmann's, then you just need to proof it in advance. And I give you instructions for that in the recipe.
Perfect.
I'm going to check my grill, which has now cooled off, of course. So I think I'm going to do what I shouldn't do and just pour some lighting fluid on it. So avert your eyes.
While you're doing that.
Yeah, so you don't see the conflagration.
Careful. If you use homegrown canned tomatoes, is there any type of tomatoes in particular you would recommend to make the sauce?
I told you there would be a conflagration. No, just tomatoes that taste good. I mean, theoretically, you want tomatoes that have a bit of a meatier texture rather than are super watery.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I would say basically what you want to do is just go for something that you like to eat. Also, you don't always have to have tomato sauce. For example, the first thing I'm going to make, and I'm going to put it in the oven over here while we're waiting for the grill to heat up, is Jeremy's favorite pizza, which doesn't have tomato sauce. So what do I need? I need my caramelized, well, they're not really caramelized onions. They're onions that have been sweated a little bit so that they're not quite so sharp and they still have a little texture. And then we have some sausage here and some fontina. So if you get serious about making pizza, you must have this. This is the one tool that is a must-have, a wooden pizza peel. And that is so you don't pull your hair out trying to get your pizza off whatever you're pretending is a pizza peel. So you want to take the flour and you want to work it into the wood. And then you want to put your pizza dough on it. Maybe put just a little bit. It's a little sticky, so. Now we're going to, are you on camera 2 here?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Evan, what's your preferred temp for the grill or the oven?
Okay, I'll answer those questions after I do this because this is important to focus on.
Perfect.
So what I just did with my fingers, that right there is Angeli bread. So if I were to slide this into a 450, 500 degree oven, that will puff up and it will give you a little bit of a empty hole like pita, but it will have more of a crumb than pita. So in order to stretch this, because it's so soft, all you need is the gravity. And you're going to use your fingers and you're just going to cup your fingers where you want the border to be, that little ridge that's thicker. Okay, so after you've gone around once, then you're going to use the back of your hands and you're just going to lightly stretch it. You don't want to stretch from the middle because you don't want the middle to get super, super thin, which it's going to want to do anyway. That's nice. I can get a little bigger though. Okay, there we go. And then with your peel, you want to check that it's not sticky. So the order you put things on is important. So I'm going to do the onions first because I don't want them to burn. And by putting the meat on top of it, that will ensure. So to do these, I cut up an onion. I put it in a saute pan with a film of olive oil on the bottom of the pan. I added salt. Salt helps the onion break down more quickly. And then I covered it. and I cooked it over like medium heat until the onions started to lose volume. And then once they were softened, I lift the lid, take the cover off, and there's a lot of onion moisture in there, a lot of liquid, and you just let that boil off and evaporate. And if you want them caramelized, you just keep going. I wanted them more blonde. So with this dough, you can't like completely load it up like you could on a sourdough base, which is a bit more sturdy. This is very fragile. And then I love fontina with this particular pizza. I don't recommend shredding your cheese because I think you have a tendency to use too much when you shred. Cheese melts, so this will all meet in the middle. Okay, so that's ready to go in. You want to make sure we're still not sticking. I have this lovely little thing for my little toaster oven. Theoretically, I could have just put the dough directly on and okay, here, go for it. Okay, assistant, would you please put it in the oven for me? Okay, so this is better.
What temperature is that at, Evan, do you think?
My oven, my little toaster oven, I have it on 500 because it's a toaster oven, but anywhere between 450 and 500. And I don't, put on the bottom, please. And I don't have, you have to lift it up a bit. This is my whole oven. That's a whole story for another day, perhaps when I'm sitting in an armchair holding a drink. Yeah, and so I don't use a stone in there. It would just be a joke. But I found that it works really well like this. So next, what I think I'm going to do is show you one of the ways that people do grilled pizzas. And that is basically making a flatbread. Because the problem with grilling is unless you're super skilled at maintaining a high oven temperature in your grill, or maybe if you have a gas grill, the top of your pizza will often not cook the same way it will in an oven where you have the two elements, bottom and top. So the trick to dealing with that is basically to treat the pizza more as a flatbread. First, see all these beautiful little bubbles? Isn't that's so pretty? The gluten did its work. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to
I can tell people are getting hungry because I have a lot of questions, Evan.
okay, one sec. Okay, so I actually didn't need that much oil in there, but okay. So I put it on the grill and hopefully it will get nice and toasty on the bottom. Just like when you're cooking fish or meat, you don't want to move it. Try and move it until you think you've gotten a crust happening. Otherwise, you're going to tear it. It's happening. It's happening. Hmm? Yeah, I put it oiled side down. When I flip it, I'm not going to add oil because there'll be a little bit of oil still on the grill from that side. If you add too much oil, then you know you'll get fire, and you don't want that to happen.
Is there a place you would recommend to get a great pizza peel?
A pizza peel. Amazon,
Okay.
Surface. If you want to go into a store, Surface has them. This is a little one. You have to, I prefer the little ones. So you have to look for it. I think this is probably 12 inches. It might be 14 inches across.
Okay.
Okay.
Very, very important question.
Now we just flipped it,
Mhm.
and you can see that the grill has started to toast the edges. And what I would do if I were having a party, see, sometimes you see people start to put all the condiments on it now on the grill. I would go ahead and make a stack of these in advance, keep them on the side, and then I would do them to order with whatever people wanted and reheat them on the grill. This looks great. So this is also a really great cheater way of doing naan. It's especially great if you brush it with ghee and garlic.
So we have a question.
Okay, ask me a question.
Okay, this is actually for Paco. Does he have a favorite
This
cheese?
for Paco?
Yeah. Does he have a favorite cheese?
Does Paco have a favorite cheese? Woof, 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 woof. Paco is an omnivore. So I love pizzas that aren't cheese heavy. So this one, I'm just going to do a little bit of olive. It has the olive oil. In the sauce, I'm going to add anchovies. Those of you who are freaked out by anchovies, let me remind you that what is sticking out from the fillet is not hair, it is bones, in case that makes it more palatable for you. I love anchovies. So this is sort of like a little puttanesca action. And then my garden gave me some zucchini this morning and some eggplant.
When would you use a pizza stone, Evan?
You'd use a pizza stone. Well, some people do use pizza stones on their grill. I think it's better to use a cast iron pizza pan, which they have. I believe Lodge makes them. They're not very expensive. And you preheat it along with your coals. What else am I going to put in here?
And with those anchovies, do you prefer salt or oil packed?
Whatever I have. I find the salt pack is a larger pack. I'm just one person, so I go for the oil just because I can get a smaller amount. Put in some capers, and then let's do some olives. Go ahead.
Would you be able to remind everyone the meat you used with the onions? The first pizza.
The meat with the onions was sausage, Italian sausage. I like sweet sausage because I feel like not everybody likes it to be spicy. Okay, let's cover it up and let it get nice and warm and bubbly on top. How's our other pizza doing? It's coming along there. I'm very hungry right now. Jeremy, should I prepare the fried calzone?
Calzone? Yes, please. No, were the zucchini and eggplant just sliced raw, or were they partially cooked?
Yeah, what I did was I sliced them vertically raw, and then I cooked them on a griddle like a panino press, that you could do it in the oven or on any kind of a griddle. Okay, so for the calzone frito, I want some ricotta. This ricotta has already been used, so you can see the whey is seeping out. If you're a person who bakes and you've been throwing that away, you should save it and use it in your breads. Move this. And so I have this really great camp stove outside. And I don't like to do my deep frying inside the house. So it's very convenient to do it outside. All right, there we go. So while the fat is heating up, look at this, the beauty of culinary mess. That's what I should title my memoirs. I might want the oregano back eventually, but that's okay. So this was a pizza that we served at Angeli, and I was going to make a smaller one. But Kleiman, who had it the other day when I was experimenting, encouraged me to make full-size one. Okay, so once again, I'm going to start the way I always start. Paco. Ooh, oh, I think this is nice. Oh, this is perfect. Here. Let's. Very nice. Little char. Here, I'll hold it. I have asbestos fingers, so you could see the bottom. It's nice, just like it was cooked on a stone. And then if I'm serving one like this, I usually put a little bit more Parmesan on. I could have put pesto underneath instead of the tomato sauce. My neighbors are going to eat very well tonight. Okay. So for this, you don't want it to get too thin, because the one disaster that can happen when you're deep frying a calzone is that it will break, and then the cheese and everything will go out into the fire, into the oil, and you don't want that to happen. So maybe just a little bit more. And I'm stretching from the edge, not from the middle. All right, now.
We have a statement.
Yes, my dear?
That just a statement that your neighbors just love you.
Can you speak up, Jeremy? I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry about that. We just have a comment that your neighbors must love you.
Yeah, well, one hopes. But I have a neighbor who's learning how to make sourdough bread, and he's kind of a savant. So it's awesome. So I'm starting with ricotta. Now, when you make these, you don't want to fill it too much. And you don't want it to have a lot of moist ingredients. So you notice I didn't put sauce on the bottom. Ooh. Here, and then we're going to put mozzarella. Now, you'll notice I'm using what's called brick mozzarella, or low moisture mozzarella. It's what is also used in Italy by just regular everyday pizzeria. Yes, there is the convention of using fresh mozzarella, but that is a Neapolitan thing. And in Rome, for example, it's an option. Okay, that's a lot of cheese. And then just a touch of sauce. So you can make this for the oven too. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. The difference is when you do it in the oven, you're gonna break it open so steam can come out, like with a pie. And you can see how thin this is because I filled it with too much cheese. We'll see what happens. I'm gonna test the fat with a little piece of, not ready, almost though. I'll take a question.
Well, more comments. Clearly everyone on here wishes that they were your neighbor or you were theirs.
I wish we could fax food to one another. That would be, you know, we're so, I feel like we're not really, you know, futuristic until we can do that.
That's
until
next.
food can appear in a remote location. A little bit more, right? I'm gonna wait. I know. So what I want to do next is I want to, Clemence, in that other box where there's some smaller pieces. Okay, here, I can put it over here. Thank you. Oh no, that was the original one. Oh, I see. So you can see that these are really puffy. These are second day, almost third day. So they get more puffy. And I made some really tiny, just so I could do things, do more kinds. That's good now. All right, we're gonna put this in.
So along the lines with the oil.
Watch this. Okay.
About how deep is that, Evan, with the oil? How much oil did you use?
I would say that's 4 inches, 3 or 4 inches.
Okay. And just
And then you want to just gently baste it. It was basically an entire bottle, a 40-ounce bottle of corn oil. You don't want to use canola. You need something a little heavier for this.
Great. Is it worthwhile to freeze the dough ever?
Oh yes, after it's risen, like
After.
now, is when you would want to freeze it. And what you would do is you just gently dust it with flour. You can put it in a Ziploc bag. You could put it in the, you could freeze it in the same to-go container that, that you allowed it to rise in. I don't know why this isn't hot. Just let it have a nice bath. So this bubble here, that's like problematic. That's where sometimes they can break open, but that's all right. It's basically like eating a pizza donut. While we're waiting for that to, to cook, we will turn this little guy into a little pizza. This is what I do when I want to use something like burrata or fresh mozzarella. And you can see the edges here have gotten a little dry, but it's okay. As I always say, perfection is the enemy of good. All right, we're ready to flip this, I believe. Peek. Clemence is like, she is, as we say in Yiddish, quelling. Okay, we're gonna just let that bubble away. And what I'm gonna do here is throw this on the grill. Like I did before. And then I'm gonna make a salad. Oh, how is the pizza doing? Let's take a look. The pizza in the oven. Oh no, oh no. I can tell, I can hear. Flip it over again. I could hear the sound of moisture escaping. Here, let's do this until it's done. Almost done. This is what you call culinary multitasking right here. I'm just gonna put it right on here. With maybe, excuse me, Paco. Excuse me, boo. Oh,
Oh, beautiful.
oh my God, that's so good looking. I'm gonna turn this down. We'll have more later. We'll make another one later. Ooh. Fried food cam. Okay. So what I did here is I have arugula. I put a little oil, salt, and pepper on it in advance, and it basically cooked it a little. Then I have some burrata here. This is Di Stefano burrata. It's really good.
And about how long will you cook that dough before you put the ingredients on it?
You have to just look at it and see when it's cooked, because there's nothing worse than raw dough. It's just really disgusting. So here's the burrata. Let me just cut it up a little bit. And then I think I had some prosciutto. Some prosciutto di Parma. Yummy. Shred that. So basically you're using the little flatbread, the pizza base, as a plate. And then you're using the raw ingredients as the condiment. Really delicious in summertime. And if I might say, one of the truly delicious things to eat is to make one of those little flatbreads and then put spaghetti on top of it. Spaghetti with either tomato sauce or spaghetti aglio olio.
Mm. And with that pizza that you're taking out, Evan, just as a reminder, you do put the ingredients on before
As a reminder, what, I'm sorry?
There was a question that they just wanted to double check that the raw dough, when you were making this pizza, the ingredients go on the raw dough before you put it in the oven.
Yes. Yeah. If you're baking it on a stone, it's raw. And you can do this also on the grill. You just have to make sure that everything that is on top of the pizza is already cooked, because chances are the grill won't cook it as completely all the way through as an oven will, which makes sense. So Jeremy, I would have walked this over to your house if you hadn't told me you were dieting.
Well,
We're not dieting, avoiding carbohydrates.
Temporarily.
Okay.
Temporarily.
So
I was the beneficiary last week, so thank you.
So this little guy is not cooking as fast as I want, so I'm going to put it directly on the coals. Because usually the way you set up a grill for cooking pizza, is you have your coals on two sides of the grill, and you use the empty part in the middle to lay your dough. And in fact, if you have a Weber kettle, they have these things called char baskets, which sit on either side, which I'm going to buy now. Yeah, look at all this stuff. This is so delicious. Okay, ask me questions now. I have no idea how much time we have.
One is just honestly salivating and can't even think about a question.
Yeah.
Well, we do have a comment.
I wish we could do an event where I could just make these all night long and feed people.
We do have a request. They'd like to see
Sure.
calzone.
Say this again.
They'd like to see the inside of the calzone.
Oh, they want to see the inside of the calzone. I don't blame them.
I know, right?
Okay. Let's do that, shall we?
And while you're about to do that, would you recommend, what would you prefer, pizza oven or versus the Weber grill?
Would I recommend what?
Which do you prefer, the pizza oven or the Weber grill?
Two completely different things. I mean, if I had a real oven at home, I mean, the oven is incredible for making pizza, but a grill is more convivial.
Ooh.
Okay, do you want me to torture you now?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Beyond.
There is nothing like this, nothing. It is just the most sublime pizza. And it is very Neapolitan fried calzone. Okay. Paco, we're going to give you the one with the salad. So what I would normally do is, oh, I don't have a knife. That's okay. I'll use this. What I would normally do is cut my pizza first into slices. So a big pizza, I would do an 8. Put it back together on the plate.
Evan.
Yes, my dear.
I hope your address is unlisted because it seems everyone on here is about to drive over.
I can't hear you. I'm sorry.
I said, I hope your address is unlisted because it seems like everyone's about to.
Well, haven't you found that during this period of time that we've had to be at home more, that you're much more aware of the aromas coming from your neighbors? I know that I am. Like, I know when people are making really great coffee in the morning, and I know when people are cooking bacon
Yeah.
or baking cookies.
Absolutely.
And as usual, now the fire is perfect. Now that we're coming to the end. All right, please ask me questions. Or else I'm just going to stand here and eat that pizza frita.
Why is yeast so hard to find in LA?
Why is yeast so hard to find in LA? Because there has been this enormous shift to home bakers. So basically the yeast industry is set up, like all food industries, really in 2 parts. There's the part that services the food service industry that has really large pack of things like pound bags of yeast. And then there's the part of the food service industry that services supermarkets, which ends up in a consumer's hand. And that's where you see the little strips of the Fleischmann's yeast that are the 3 little packages. So what happened was overnight, all of these companies of all different kinds of food, but yes, yeast too, were stuck with huge amounts of restaurant pack and food service pack and not enough consumer. That's why it's hard. Clemence has yeast. So you can contact Gourmandise Cooking School. Is it on your store?
Yeah. You just call the front desk.
Yeah, you can call the front desk and you can go pick some up.
And Surface also
Excellent.
has
And Surface also has some. And there's places that have been operating as grocery stores around town that have it, like Secret Lasagna here in West Hollywood has it. I'm sure that Cookbook, I'm sure there's plenty of places on the east side that have it. You just have to don't rely on your supermarket. You have to be a bit more inventive as a consumer to find things.
Can you describe briefly how to proof yeast?
How to proof yeast?
Mhm.
Well, if you're using a non-instant kind of yeast, you would just take, well, for example, this recipe calls for 1 1/4 cups of water. The 1/4 cup of water is poured into a small container and you sprinkle the yeast on top. And basically you wait for the yeast to, quote, bloom. And which just means really that you see it start to dissolve. You might see it start to bubble, but usually you don't. And then you pour it into your mixture as a liquid, as opposed to what I did. The lazy person's way.
And now, is Fleischmann's pizza crust yeast an instant yeast you would use?
It's really, Fleischmann's is really the only yeast that you can find in supermarkets. If you're going to pick up yeast at any of these other locations that I've told you about, chances are it's going to be instant yeast and it's going to be in a package without a brand name on it. Like it'll be in a little tiny deli or a little plastic container, because what all of these grocery stores, these little guerrilla grocery stores have done is they've ordered the restaurant packs, which are easy to get from their wholesalers, and they've divided it up for the consumer.
Now, is there a certain temperature that the water should be when you put the yeast in it?
Tepid. The water should be tepid. Maybe a tiny little bit warmer. No?
I do always colder than 150.
Oh,
And-
you do cold. See, the Kleiman says colder than 115. That's for like a Fleischmann's yeast, all yeast. So Kleiman says that the warm water, tepid water thing is a myth. Just use cold water. I mean, at Angeli, we used cake yeast, we used real brewer's yeast, and we used ice water. The colder your water is, the harder the yeast has to work to rise, and the more it's what you call retarding the yeast. You're doing what you can to put obstacles in front of the rise, and that creates more complex flavors in your eventual dough.
And how can you tell if it's instant or not
It'll say on the package.
in the package? And if it's not instant, is it called something else?
I think it's called active rising.
Active dry or rapid rising?
Rapid rising, either active dry or rapid rising.
And if for some strange reason it's not on the package, just ask.
Oh, it's always on the package.
Okay.
And this is what Google is for.
Hmm.
I'm very aggressive. I go online and I look up brands and I look what's in the pack. You know, I look at the ingredients and I find out the information I need. But it's on the package.
Okay.
Come here,
Wow.
boo. Come.
Amazing, Evan, as always.
Paco, say hi. Oh, he's looking for food. I pointed down. There he is, my little lamb. I hope everybody's had a good time. How many of you will actually try and do this?
I'm waiting. Looks like there's a lot. Although
Oh,
some are
that's great.
some
So
are
now
saying calzone though.
yeah, good. You're smart. Do that because you can't get this at a pizzeria, and especially a pizzeria that will deliver to you or that you could go pick up. I want you to know we now have a special relationship. And now that we've taken a class together, you can always email me and ask me questions. I'm happy to answer them. I'm very easy to find.
You're the best, Evan. Thank you again for this evening.
Oh, thank you. I wish I could see everybody. And I give you a big, big virtual hug, and to the day that we can see one another together in a non-virtual setting. Thank you so much.